A lot of you have been asking for this one, and now it's time. How to build a Mutineer. This is based off the testing we have seen in the VXP weekend targets, which will be the same mechanics as the raid targets. All the exact damage and the exact targets are actually going to be different. But we have gained enough information, and I have gained enough information to make a very good prediction on what the raid targets will be, and therefore how to build our ships to defeat these raid targets. I'm going to over-engineer this thing and make it more complicated than it can be. If you want to take simplifications and do things the easy way where you'll be very safe, go ahead and do that. I will be showing you a safe build as well, but I'm going to be doing something a little bit more complicated to show you how good your fleets can actually be and the kind of decisions that I am making here. Starting out, the Mutineer is a skirmish hull, and you're going to be building it for the raid targets starting next month in the July and August raids. You do have upgrades, which are pretty important, and I will make a different video talking about how good upgrades actually are and doing the math on those, some of which I have already done. Something to note about the Mutineer is it has lots and lots of armor points, nearly as much as the Zealot, has a really high inbuilt concussive damage bonus, and has built-in evade, which tells you that will be important, and a moderate combat speed, and it has some sonar in it, but we haven't seen any subs in the enemy targets. That sonar is mainly for detecting the torpedoes. It also has a really, really important special ability, which is the proto ammo. You cannot boost the special weapon here with any sort of built-in specials, as it says unaffected by specials. If it was, you could do something crazy with 2.5 million damage, but that's the number you're going to get. You can't buff any of this stuff. Another thing about the Mutineer is people are talking about how it has basically zero defense, only has the evade, has zero built-in survival. While that's technically true, it's very, very misleading. This thing has 4,000 survival in an aura, duplicate aura cap of 5 applied to each Mutineer, and what's going to be called the flagship, the Merciless Mutineer in the fleet. I'm expecting the Merciless Mutineer to have a survival bonus of about 8,000 per hull, just judging based on the Zealot, as well as maybe a stronger weapon and maybe some other sort of fun special mechanic. But that's all aside from that. You have about 20,000 at least built-in survival if you have 5 blank holes, so people telling you it has 0 defense to start out with is sort of incorrect and is very misleading. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get started with talking about what weapons and specials and armors you're going to use on this thing. First of all, let's go with weapons. I'm going to show you first the safe build, and then I'm going to post a link in that one in the hash code. If you just want to build 5 all the same, that is what you should go with, but I will be showing you how to do something better than that. Let's just put Freedom Fist Gatling guns on 9 weapon slots. Now you won't actually have enough of these, and you won't actually be able to go on all 9 weapon slots because we probably, based on historical data, are not going to be able to get enough weapons. We can't get 9 times 5 weapons, 45. We'll probably only be able to get 40. So somewhere in your holes, you're going to have to drop down the Freedom Fist Gatling gun to the regular one, whichever one that's actually called. I actually don't own it yet. I didn't pick it up in the raid because I thought I was going to have enough of the limited ones, but I will get it in the TLC next week when I'm sure it will come out in that one. And that is the drumroll Gatling gun. So 9 weapon slots, fill them up with those. One of the weapon slots, one of these first 2 at the front, you can also put countermeasures in there. Now we have a choice here of basically 1 countermeasure, so not really of a choice. In previous skirmish cycles, we saw that anti-mortars Gales did help. This raid cycle of VXP testing we have done, Gales did not fire whatsoever, they were worthless. Therefore, the only weapon we can put in here is the Cormorant Anti-Torpedo. This is a countermeasure damage type, which means the only things that buff countermeasures will actually work for this thing. Notice it has 6 accuracy here and a decently high projectile speed, and it counters torpedoes. This will be important when we talk about the damage type, will be important when we talk about the countermeasures. There we have that. Okay. Now, let's talk about specials. The first one you have to decide on is an engine. Best engine that you can probably put on all 5 ships, if you're going the same one, is the limited Old Glory engine. This gives you some really nice stats, but it's sort of annoying because you have to get 45,000 points in the Forsaken mission for this one. So if you don't want to go with this one, and you don't want to justify and reward Kicksai for giving 45,000 point engine, you can do what many of us are doing and going for the Reef Rider engine, which is unlimited and is also in the Forsaken mission, but you only have to redeem it one time, and most of you probably already have it on your riots. I plan on using this one, and the advantages with the Reef Rider engine is that you do gain the projectile speed and the concussive damage, which is great. Unfortunately, you do lose 5% evade, 200 explosive survival, and 3200 concussive survival. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Reef Rider engine, although you could easily put the Old Glory engine on your ships there if you really wanted to. Now let's talk about the next couple specials. These are going to be damage specials that will help your ships deal more damage. They're going to be the same on all your ships. Because you can only put 2 countermeasures on each weapon slot here on each ship, you can't put a countermeasure on every single weapon slot. The first one I'm going to go for is a limited one. If you didn't get it in Raid, it will likely be in the final mastery prize of the TLC. This is the Impact Overdrive special here. This adds depth charge critical chance, which stacks with other depth charge critical chances, as well as 42% concussive damage. If you don't add this, you have to add some other sort of concussive damage special. The most notable one is the Open Water Warfare Battery, which you can get from the Forsaken mission. The concussive damage is 37.5%, and it also adds splash damage reduction. I don't like splash damage reduction as a stat, and I don't even think it works properly most of the time, so I would not recommend picking this if you have the ability to go with Impact Overdrive. The 4,500 is a big number, but splash damage reduction does not apply if the enemy weapon hits really, really close to your ship, which it looks like in the raid these things actually are. And I just think that the more damage is going to be much, much better, and more critical is going to be much, much better because you have other sources of critical from R&D and from other specials. So Impact Overdrive is my number one choice here. Another damage dealing special is going to be one that boosts concussive damage. The best one you can use here is the Liberty Belt, which boosts concussive damage by 95% and concussive reload by 50%. That concussive reload thing will come back when I talk about the upgrades in a different video. If you don't have this, just go ahead and use Advanced Concussive Payload 3, which has the same concussive reload but just less damage. And it does have less weapon weight, so it may be an option if you're looking towards doing something sort of like that. But the number one choice here is the Liberty Belt. Okay, the last damage special that's going to be consistent on all the ships here is going to be Full Metal Casing. This adds critical damage as well as adds splash, which is great, and also some critical chance, because you need some critical chance to deal critical damage. If you don't have this one, you can go for the number 2 choice, which is the Hydro Explosive Casing, which has very, very similar stats, except it just has lower depth charge critical chance and depth charge splash. If you happen to not have this one, you can go for PBX Payload 2, which is just another war special that came out with the Hunters a very long time ago. Notice that you can't use any sort of thing like the Sealed Fire Charge or the Blister Hot Bat Ray because torpedo critical chance doesn't work. These weapons are not torpedoes, they are depth charges. Full Metal Casing is my number one choice here. The next couple specials are going to vary around a little bit and will change a lot when I talk about my over-engineered builds. But something that you're probably going to want to have on here is Signal Amplification Armor. Now you do have some choices here because I'm going to talk about something that boosts countermeasures. Now if I just search countermeasure, you see a whole bunch of different specials. But if you hover over Signal Amplification Armor, you can see that it only adds countermeasure range. It also adds some anti-mortar stuff, which isn't relevant whatsoever to the conversation because we don't have anti-mortars, we have damage type countermeasure. There's an option here, there adds 75% countermeasure range. If you want another special here, you can go for something else, like any of this stuff only adds countermeasure range 2. But the one that does add something more is Countermeasure Loaders 4. This does add countermeasure range 62% instead of 75%, but it has a bonus of reload to pretty much all weapon types in the game. You can see here that it does give you some really nice stats here and could be a little bit better for some of your ships. But the thing that most people are missing about this thing is the 9,600 additional survival. Running the numbers on this with a full build kitted out, at U0, if you have this one versus the second special I will suggest, you will go from basically having Signal Amplification Armor at a U0 fleet will bring your damage taking, it will reduce your damage by 16% with a U0 fleet based off the numbers from survival. I would like to take 16% damage, even if the countermeasure range stat isn't the one I'm primarily putting it on there for, it is still somewhat helpful. If you want to go for another sort of special, you could choose Atomizer Nozzle. This is the only limited special that does boost countermeasures, and I did get up to 5 of them in the raid because I thought that was what I was going to be going for. Only focusing on the countermeasure stats here, you can see it adds 75% countermeasure range, which is the same exact as the previous one. It adds 0 survival, but you do gain concussive reload, which is great for your depth charge, your weapons that you're actually doing, your Gatling guns, and it also adds countermeasure reload. So you can choose between having extra survival and extra reload for all your weapons. Notice that this concussive reload does not make your ships 30% better. Running the numbers at U0, it makes your ships 20% better based off the reload. If you're wondering about those numbers at a U3 fleet, Atomizer Nozzle makes your ships 15% better, and Signal Amplification Armor only makes your ships now 13% less damage. In both cases, whether you're going for a U0 or a U3 fleet, I am leaning towards Signal Amplification Armor, although if you want to have more reload, Atomizer Nozzle is a great option for you. I don't think reload will be especially important in these targets because they're not very target dense. Ships are very, very spread out from each other, so you have time to go reload. In any case, we're talking about each weapon having a 0.4 second reload time, and that's just based off the 3.2 second reload time you're dealing with here. Windup shouldn't have anything to do with that because while that does double your damage, it doesn't really do anything to the reload time. But it is a cool stat to keep in mind. This last slot here is going to be something that is sort of up to you and will definitely change a lot. You're going to want to go for something that will help your ships evade more damage because we have a lot of torpedo damage in these targets. And I'm going to recommend, a lot of people like to go with Hyper 30 for some reason. I think that something like Guidance Scrambler 3 is much better. Because, and let's see if I can get it to show up here, Guidance Scrambler 3 adds 49.5% evade when it's up to R15 like I have it. If I go to Hyper 30 on the blueprint section, it really is not that good of a special. Let me see if I can find it here. Hyper 30 is under limited, of course, that's why I can't find it. Hyper 30 only adds 30% evade and 540 splash damage reduction, even if it works and even if it applies to your ships. That's like adding 540 for survival. That's a rounding error, that's virtually nothing. The other option you could go for is the damage diffusion system, 7,500, and again 30% evade with 15% bonus combat speed, all of which are nice, but again that 7,500 survival, even if it applies 100% effective, is not that great, is not going to overcome the evade that you're actually missing. So I'm going to recommend the last special slot is Guidance Scrambler 3, which you should all have because it's researchable. A lot of people also ask, hey, why not Agility System 4? And the answer is simple, because you get slightly more build time for the same exact evade. Now, you do get slow and stun resistance, but that only helps if you're getting slowed and or stunned in something that is not a tactical field and or aura. So it won't help at all in these targets that we've seen, and really doesn't help in most PvP and even most PvP targets out there. I'm going to recommend Guidance Scrambler 3. Okay, now armors. What you can do is you can go for the new limited armors and just don't look at anything else, just stick those right on there. That is 2 of the ZCT2s, basically the Concussive Armor version 2, and 2 of the Concussive Armor version X, the ZX2. If you are a player who just wants to build 5 things exactly the same, go for this build right here. I will put this in the YouTube description. And also build a flagship like this thing. I obviously haven't seen the flagship, but we could have some other stat that makes something go crazy, but build the flagship like this one too if you're building all 5 the same. If you want to be safe, go with this design. If you want to take the least amount of damage, go with what I'm going to tell you next, and that is over-engineering this thing like crazy. So what I have seen in these targets is that ships tend to, I'm using 5 riots in these things for a 5-ship fleet by the way. Every single time I've tested it, ship number 5 is targeted a huge amount by the torpedoes. Other people running for Mutineers, my Mutineers are not completely tested enough to actually see that in action. People running for Mutineers are getting something, they're getting the flagship, whatever they have in that ship slot number 1, focused with concussive damage. It takes like 2 or 3 times as more concussive damage than the rest of the fleet. And also in these targets, all of the damage that the middle 3 ships are taking, I believe, is explosive damage. All the concussive damage is accuracy based here, and all of the splash damage is explosive. That means we can do some really, really powerful things. First of all, these middle 3 ships, they aren't getting hit by any sort of damage you can evade or anything like that, so I'm going to build them as a primarily damage-focused ship. We're going to take off this Cormorant anti-torpedo, and we're going to put on another Gatling gun. It could be the Freedom Fist one, it could be the Drumroll Gatling gun. They just deal about, this one just deals slightly better damage. They have the same exact weight. It doesn't matter which one you're really using. Just try and put the best one you have on there. Now, because these middle 3 ships are not getting hit by any sort of torpedoes, evade is useless on them if they're not getting hit by torpedoes. Now, I could be wrong on this thing, and maybe Kixeye changes things around on us, but I don't believe I am, so I'm going to go ahead, instead of Guidance Scrambler 3, I'm going to put on Explosive System 4. Now, what Explosive System 4 does is it increases your splash, which is great, because all of your weapons here, all of your depth charge that are actually firing, they are doing splash. Additionally, this increases your projectile speed, meaning those really, really fast battlecruiser ships and the targets, you can hit them more easily. It also reduces your spread, meaning your fire is more focused on what you're actually shooting at. This is a really good thing for Gatling guns, but it's not such of a good thing if you're running with some sort of rocket thing. So Explosive System 4 is great on this one. Notice that we are actually still underweight here with this build. I'm not going to swap out Signal Amplification Armor for Hydro Atomizer Nozzle because it still adds, Signal Amplification Armor still adds Explosive Survival, which is something that I really want to focus on. You should really be focusing on Explosive Survival with these ships. Because of that, I'm going to take one of these armors, I'm going to swap it out for a ZX2 armor to increase my Explosive Survival even higher. And if you're not already, use Reef Rider Engine because that adds some explosive survival, basically the same as the regular, as the one that's slightly better or people think is slightly better. And this thing also adds more concussive damage, which is great. Okay, if you look in the damage survival here of the defense, you will see that I have much more explosive survival than concussive survival. Also factor in the special ability from the aura that I talked about at the beginning, which adds about 20,000 survival to each individual ship, each mutineer and flagship mutineer in the fleet. If you wanted to, you could even swap out this last armor here for another explosive armor, although I don't think I'll be doing that, just on the off chance there is some sort of concussive damage in these targets. This is the damage dealing build here. Do not build all 5 ships like this, but build 3 middle ones like this one. Now, if that's the damage dealing ship, we need to have something else that is the countermeasure or ship in 1 and 5 because those are targeted primarily by torpedoes. I'm going to choose to go for cormorants in my anti-slots again here. I'm going to have 2 on 2 ships here, so 4 total, which should be enough, maybe with a countermeasure range of blocking everything here. I'm going to take my Explosive System 4 off and go back to Evade, Guidance Scrambler 3. Again, do not put Hyper 30 on here, especially if you haven't gone for Hyper 30 on your other 3 ships, because then they won't be the same speed. Okay, there's a few more changes we can make to increase our concussive survival and our evade. This is going to mean our damage is reduced slightly here. You can see it's at 3 million right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 of these armors, and instead of putting on the concussive version 2 armor, I'm going to put on the concussive version 1. It is limited, so I will have to go out and hit more Forsaken mission targets to get this thing, but this adds slightly less survival, and the really good thing that it adds is it adds 10% evade, and again, no additional repair. Evade is great here, and I almost considered going for something like the D5 EV plates, but the problem is that changes your combat/turn speed, so that's not good. I'm going to go for something that still adds concussive survival, but also adds a whole bunch of evade. So I'll put those on 3 slots here and leave 1 explosive armor, because this ship will still take explosive damage, will still take splash damage like the rest of the fleet will, so you still do want a decent amount of explosive resist on here. Now this is you can see that the damage dropped from 3 million to 2.8 million. You do slightly less damage with this particular ship than with everything else here. Something else you could choose to do is, instead of the Reef Rider engine, which has that 10% concussive damage boost, is you could go for something else, such as the Old Glory engine, which has slightly better survival and evade numbers. Go for that on ships 1 and 5. And if you are going to upgrade, make sure to upgrade these ones to U2, your 1st and 5th ship to U2, and the other 3 ships can be upgraded to something more like, upgrade those to U3, because that adds more concussive reload, which is important for those damage dealing ships. And that's all you need to know about that one. We don't know what the X1 upgrades will bring yet, but they usually bring something slightly different and slightly fun. This is my over-engineered design for my 1st and 5th ships. This will also be in the hash code description. At this point, I would like you to let me know what sort of design will you be going with. Will you be going for something that has all 5 ships doing the same damage? Will you be sort of over-engineering like I am and going for something that is designed to do what we're seeing in the targets right now? Let me know that in the comments. If you enjoy the work I put into this video, all the numbers and stuff, the calculations I do take time. It's not just throwing together a ship in the shipyard, it's looking at the targets and talking with numerous people on Discord and other Battle Pirates places. Go ahead and leave a like if you did think this video was helpful and if you can tell I put some work into it. As always, this is Derpy, signing out, helping you be a better pirate.